Hello, my name is Andrea, and this is Starlight Stories for Magical Children. Here you will find a collection of stories that were told to me from storytellers from magical realms, the animal kingdom, and nature. I am delighted to share these stories with you. And maybe as you listen, you'll find that life really is magical, and so are you. Our storyteller today is a leprechaun by the name of Louis. There is one thing you need to know about Louis. He can be a bit of a trickster. Do you know what it means to be a trickster? Tricksters are typically characters in stories that like to cause mischief and create chaos. But here's the thing about Louis. His tricks are actually quite friendly and kind of fun. One of his most common tricks he likes to play is he likes to take a stick and turn it into a magic stick. And then he places it on the forest floor, knowing that it looks just like a regular stick, and then waits to see if anyone can find it. See what I mean by kind of fun tricks? I would love to find a magical stick on the forest floor. So now that you've gotten to know Louis a little bit better, it is time to start the story. So, let's begin. Once there was a child named Esme. Esme was out for a walk in the forest with her mom and her dog Patches. Today, Esme's mom was holding the leash, which Esme didn't mind at all, for Patches loved to sniff and sniff and sniff and pull Esme forward and try and go faster, following the trail of whatever scent his nose had picked up. Esme, on the other hand, she preferred a slow stroll through the woods. She liked to look for animal tracks, listen for the rapping of pileated woodpecker, and sometimes just reach down and feel the soft moss between her fingertips. But most of all, she loved finding sticks. She had quite the collection at home from many other journeys out into the woods. On this particular walk, as her mother was out in front of her with their eager dog, Esme was walking slowly along when she saw a little patch of moss. As she stopped to take a closer look, something caught her attention out of the corner of her eye. She looked over, and there was a stick. She was eyeing it up, wondering if this might be the next stick for her collection. She walked over to the stick, and she reached down and picked it up. It was the perfect weight, not too light and flimsy where it would easily snap, not too heavy where it would weigh her down, and it was just the right height where she could use it as a walking stick. And when her hand wrapped around it, it felt perfect. It almost felt like the stick was made just for her. Oh yeah, this stick is definitely making my collection, Esme thought to herself. But then, she had this feeling like she was being watched. She quickly turned and looked around. She didn't see anyone there. And then she heard the unmistakable sound of her mother calling, "Esme, come on, Esme, come on and catch up." With the stick in hand, she hurried and caught up to her mom and her dog Patches. "Hey, Mom, I found a stick." Her mom looked down. "Oh, that's a beautiful one, honey. Nice find." And so they continued on their walk. Now, there really was somebody watching. It was Louis the leprechaun. He peeked around a tree trunk and rubbed his hands together, pleased that someone had picked up his magic stick. Now, Louis knew that in order to see what the magic stick actually did, he'd have to follow along. But here's the thing with the magic sticks that Louis made. He didn't give them a certain type of magic, he just made them magical. Their magic came to life when there was a problem that needed to be solved. What he really liked to see was the look of surprise on the face of the person who found the stick. So he quietly followed along. Esme and her mom and Patches continued their hike. They'd been hiking for quite a ways when Esme said, "Hey, Mom, can we stop and have our lunch now?" "Yeah, now's a nice time." So they found an old fallen log to sit on. Esme's mom wrapped their dog's leash around a tree and they sat down to enjoy their lunch and take a little rest. But just as Esme was pulling her lunch out of her backpack, a squirrel darted right past Patches. Patches lunged after the squirrel, and then he did this wild move and he managed to slip out of his collar. It all happened so fast they couldn't stop it, and he was off, chasing after the squirrel. Esme and her mom tried calling his name, "Patches, Patches, come here, Patches." But he was the type of dog that when he was on the chase, there was nothing they could do to get him to turn back. Esme and her mom tried running after him, but they also didn't want to lose the trail. They relied on the trails to find their way, and so they watched helplessly as he ran farther and farther and slowly disappeared from their view. "Oh no, oh no," Esme said. "Okay, Esme," said her mom. "Let's keep going down the trail. Maybe we'll catch up with him." They quickly packed up their things and started walking. Esme, feeling discouraged, said, "How are we going to find Patches?" And with that question, Esme suddenly started to feel the stick in her hand pull her forward, hard. "Hey, Mom, this stick, it feels like it's pulling me. Like it's pulling me off the trail. Feels like it wants me to walk this way." Esme's mom looked over and said, "Here, let me see it." And so she grabbed hold of the stick. Whoa, oh my goodness. She could feel the pulling and tugging too. That is strange. Her mom looked shocked, and Esme looked at her with eyes wide. Esme asked, "Do you think maybe it's trying to show me the way? Maybe it's trying to help us find our dog?" Her mom hesitated. Well, but with a sudden burst of energy, the stick yanked Esme forward so hard she could barely stay on her feet. "Mom, I think I have to follow it. I believe it's going to lead us to Patches." Mom was a bit more cautious than Esme, for she had lived her whole life and had never come across a stick like this. But she said, "Okay, let's do it." And so off they went. With the stick leading the way, they were darting through the woods, almost so fast it was hard to keep up. There was so much force from the stick. Esme had to run. Her mom had to run, realizing they were probably running at the same speed as their dog who had been chasing that squirrel. Esme's mom shouted, "I sure hope we find Patches soon. I was not prepared for a sprint through the woods today." And then off in the distance, they began to see the shape of what looked like a small animal at the base of a large pine tree. "I think that's him," Esme shouted. And as they got closer, they could see it was Patches. And it was him sitting at the base of the tree, tail wagging, looking up into the branches. The squirrel had gotten away, but he was keeping a close watch. "Patches, we found you! We found you!" Esme and her mom hugged each other and hugged Patches. They put his collar back on. Whew! They caught their breath. They stopped there, decided to eat the lunch that they didn't have a chance to eat before, and they each took turns holding on to Patches. After they were finished eating, they packed up their bags and looked around. Esme's mom looked at Esme and said, "Do you think that stick of yours can get us back home?" Esme looked at the stick and said loudly, "Show us the way home." But the stick was still. Esme shot her mom a concerned look. "Try again," her mom encouraged. "Okay, I'll try it more politely this time. Stick, we need to find the way home. Can you please take us back to the trail?" But again, the stick was still. This time it was Mom who shot a concerned look at Esme. Esme looked back at her mom and said, "How do we get back to the trail?" And just like before, it's like the stick could hear the question. Esme felt the tug of the stick. Mom, the stick is pulling me this way." They followed, and sure enough, the magic stick was able to bring them right back to the trail. And as soon as they knew where they were going, the stick was still. It seemed to transform back into just a regular stick. Esme and her mom could hardly believe what had just happened, and they felt so much relief to be back on the trail. That was enough excitement for them. They turned in the direction of home and continued walking. And Louis, well, he watched the whole thing, and he was delighted to see how his trick played out. When Esme arrived at her home, she took her new stick and brought it over to her collection. She set it beside her other sticks. And even though this new stick was actually magical, all of her sticks held a bit of magic, for they all reminded her of an adventure she had once had, and they all held a special place in her heart. And it's a good reminder that often we can still find magic in the ordinary things. The